everyone, and thank you for coming from API first to API only. So my name is Oscar Walter. I'm CTO at Stockley, the first global inventory for retail. This is actually my first time as a speaker, so please be nice for my lack of experience, and I hope everything will go fine. So first, we have a big problem in this industry. The cost of development is exploding. The digital era requires ever more developers, and there's actually a huge hype in Paris right now for startups. So we need even more developers. But the number of developers hasn't changed a lot the last few years. Therefore, these are logical consequences. There's a recruitment crisis for developers. It gets harder and harder every time. And that looks in the salary. Let's look at the salary of Telecom Paris. That's the main school we recruit from. In 2016, it was 44, and right now, it's 49 on average, 1 year after. Same school, same lessons, a bit more AI than before, but basically same stuff. It's an 11% increase in salary for the same type of people. Obviously, you could tell me, but there's inflation. I mean, salaries tends to go up, but actually inflation wasn't that high the last few years. It was 0.2 in 2016, and around 1 last year, and will be around 1.9 this year. That's 2.1 last 3 years, which means that's a 9.07 increase of just the cost, the same. It's becoming such a problem that there's actually a lot of startups starting to build, helping people hiring. So I invested myself to the invested capital in recruiting startups, as Hire Suite, as Talent.io. 2014 was a bit less than $300 million a year. Nowadays, it's between $800 and $900 million a year. That's 3 times what it was 4 years ago. So, big problem. Obviously, big tech company have solutions. They pay a hell of a lot of developers. Easy, simple. It works. And look at the median salary for Facebook. It's $240 a year. That's literally a quarter of my last fundraising. If I had to build a company with 4 developers, I would not go very far. That's actually the same thing for Alphabet, Netflix, and Twitter. I have a funny story about this. My little brother is in Canada. He started building his company. His last 3 CTOs actually left for Facebook, then Alphabet, and then Twitter. He's literally crying for help to get talented people to work on a startup and to compete against those guys. I say startup Facebook infrastructure. You have to be able to build something good with no developers or few developers. What if I told you you don't need front end? Cut in half. Got a lot of hassles working on front end. First, let's see how many browsers there is. I actually went on Wikipedia to get the list of the different browsers. I arrived on this. That's the list of all browsers. And every little dot is a different version. I can bet you there's still a grandma in the south of France using the not-so-missed IE6. That's hot. You can also look at screen sizes. You can go to HTTP screen sizes, but yes, there's 219 different screen sizes. The whole point of front end is that it works, and so you have to support most of the screen sizes. Every time you cut short your market. You don't create as much value as you would have expected. And lastly, all the different operating systems. But there's Microsoft, macOS, and Debian, quite similar, but I haven't even listed the one for the phones. And then there's all the different versions. Ubuntu Debian, they're kind of known for breaking things every time. So, and moreover, it's actually harder to code. Front-end is way harder than back-end. Because there's no tests. Like, how do you do tests? You have to do end-to-end testing, and that's really hard. I have 2 funny stories about that. First, great friend of mine, Gabriel, he started a startup called Madumbo. He said, I'm a Tesla hardware startup, so I'm just going to send a robot and click pretty much everywhere, a bit smarter than that, and it's going to test. 1 year and a half later, we sold it for 505 million to Datadog. Lacoste, one of the first clients, is still paying today 20 Indians on full time just to click on their website to see if it works. It's so hard, and it costs a lot of money. Even in Gentry, you have 2 languages. You can't do front if you don't know a little bit of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and 3.5 if you can't TypeScript. And when developers don't like front-end, it has this kind of negative connotation that, yeah, it's for news, well, which I don't agree because it's actually harder. But then you get, hiring gets more difficult. And back to the first stage, I mean, hiring is difficult. And lastly, it's harder to improve. Like, what doesn't go wrong? You've got to A/B test, you've got to track precisely what you usually do. It's really hard. Backend, however, has a lot of benefits. You can actually restrict the languages you use. Personally, we only use JavaScript and PHP, and I think that's going to be it for the next 5 years. Thanks to God bless Docker, you can have only 1 deployment, and that works pretty much everywhere. Thanks to AWS, you have 1 infrastructure. Easy, simple, always the same thing. Moreover, you can focus on value. Changing a button from red to blue is not what's going to build the new Facebook. You can focus on data transfer and data aggregation. Build the right API. Build what's bringing value to your company. Moreover, you've got a lot of frameworks and good practices for you. You've got, even if you want to build an API, I would suggest you look at Loopback, which basically makes everything for you. And that means you can literally focus on your business case. Focus on what makes your company unique and what your company makes to bring value. We're going to look at 2 different examples. First, obviously, Stockley, because that's what I do. So Stockley, we're the global inventory for retail. What do? We connect the stocks of every e-retailer to mutualize data and reduce the out of stocks. Let's say you have 2 e-commerce websites, A and B. And they sell the same shoe, and A doesn't have it anymore, like it happens most of the time in retail. Approximately 40% of the stock in e-commerce is actually out of stock. So they have out of stocks. We sell the product, they transfer the order, we transfer it to B, B send it directly to the consumer. Great business. First, there's the API. Stockley, with the synchronized stocks and the global inventory. I will only focus on the plugins. For big retailers, I can do custom plugins and still no front end. For smaller retailers, I can give them SDK and still no front end. And for even people who are using frameworks as Magento, you can still give them a Magento plugin, always backend. The last one, which is the funniest one, is the scraper plugin. Since it's actually long to sign people, we tend, when they don't answer that fast, we tend to scrape them to know their stocks. So we needed a management system to handle their stocks and their orders as if they were in the system, which obviously they didn't. That's why we interfaced with APIdays. We could have built our own front, our own dashboard, but that's a waste of time. I wanted a management system. There are multiple ones. I chose APIdays because I was knowing the API, but I only had to integrate through the API. I don't have to code all the nice little things, can drag and drop, all things that take time. It does not bring value. What brings value is to know the stocks. Which means we could focus on a lot of different points. For example, documentation. We focused a lot on documentation. Also, we could have built a website to have all our documentation and read it. Again, not a point. Use Notion. All documentation is markdown, directly imported to Notion. Same for back office, hard drive, and front end. That's the retailer's job. That's not mine. I've outsourced all the costly development to other people. I want to look at another use case, which is, as it may, artificial intelligence for radiologists. Great friends of mine. Basically what they do is they tell when there's a radio, they tell you pretty precisely when there's nothing. And that's 90% of the radios. But still, there's nothing that costs a few minutes to radiologists. So, they had two solutions. First, you could build an add-in on existing software, which has great advantages and kind of defaults. First, they could focus on the technology, work more on the artificial intelligence. But they had kind of legal problems sending the images from locally to their servers. France kind of hard. And then the integration would be quite tricky, because you have to integrate with those big corporations that do radiologist software. Something they could have done is a new software that you go to the front end. And it's actually hard to sell to customers because, well, you're literally asking them to change their habits, and that's one of the hardest things to do. But they have better defensibility and they have more control on what their technology do. Why choose one? Well, my whole speech would be about the first one, or choose the second one. Well, in their case, they actually chose the second one. And I had actually a really interesting discussion about with these guys about why did they choose the second one, because I saw no great advantages. Well, because their core value is usage. Their core value is to make radiologists win time. They have a great AI, but it takes 5 different buttons to click to use it. The radiologist loses more time using the interface than using the AI and actually doing his job. The core value is their usage. If your core value is usage, then you should focus on front end and how do people use your software. And maybe you don't want to build this company if you don't like front end. But sorry. Lastly, I had a fun fact. What if we were 10 years ago? I actually could have done exactly the same speech, taking 2 different examples as Criteo and Riot Games. Criteo literally had little to no front for the first 3 years. They literally just focused on the technology of matching what people saw on websites and what ad you should send. Riot Games, guys literally didn't know how to code. They were gamers. They still were going to launch a game. And they were actually quite famous for being the most bugged game ever in history. Still, people thought as it's mechanics. Amazing stuff. And right now, they've been, well, not right anymore this year, thanks to Fortnite, but they've been, for a few years, the most played game in the world. So in short, if you want to remember 2 things about my speech, first, focus on core value. And second, dodge or hack front end. Thank you very much.